Hey everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of the talent system. In this tutorial I'm going to be teaching you guys how to actually display your talents on screen using OnGUI, and we're going to be placing icons and grabbing each of the different aspects of each of the classes we created for each skill. And so we're just going to go through and we're going to place each one and show you how to set that up. But for this tutorial I'm just going to be showing you how to set one up. In the future, when we get into the more advanced stuff, like going from one talent to the next talent, I'll show you guys this setup for each one of those different talents. But for now, you can just go through and use the steps that I'm going to give you to lay out your different talent system. And from there, in the future tutorials, I'll let you guys know how to go through and apply each of the talent points to each tree and make it so you can't add talent points to certain parts of the tree without acquiring a certain amount before then. So if you have a talent point that's all the way at the bottom, but it requires something like 30 talent points, you're not going to be able to access that unless you get all the previous branches of that tree. So that's how it works for a lot of MMOs. So you need the required talent points to unlock certain talent, and once you've unlocked that talent, you can move on to the next talent. So I'll be showing you guys how to do that. And sometimes it doesn't just specify that you need the full talent. So let's say talent requires 5. Each time you put a talent point in there, it'll increase it by a little bit. So let's say you start off with 10 critical strike, and then when you put another point in, you get 20 crit, put another point in 30, and then 3 out of 3 is like the maximum. From there, maybe the talent point after it only costs, well, maybe you only need to put 2 talent points into the first one before you can access the next one. So we'll try setting up a system like that in the future, but for now we just want to get our talents displayed on screen. So we want to jump back into our code. And if you followed the previous tutorial, we already set up our skill system. I'm actually going to change this to unlocked, just so we know when we can go down to the next one. It just makes more sense to name it unlocked. You guys can keep it how it was before or change it to that. I'm just going to keep it at this just to be able to keep track of it better. So in our talent system, I ended up setting up the button system that we're going to be using. So if you guys haven't worked with this before, this is how you display buttons in Unity or other GUI elements that you might want to display. So right here we have a if statement, which has a GUI button. So this is pretty much saying if we press on this button, it'll activate something in here. And when we go through and create this, we create a rectangle like we do before, and we're just specifying the location of this button. So right now I have it located in the center of the screen. I'll probably change that up later. And then we want to specify the size of the icon that we want for the actual GUI button itself. And that's going to be the size of our button and the size of our texture. Now from here we want to create a new GUI content. Now in here we'll be able to put our icon for the skill that we're going to be using, and we want to display the skill name. So in here, later on we'll add more details to this, but for now we're just going to leave it at skill name, just so you guys can get that set up. But pretty much what this does is create the skill icon, and it displays what you want to display on the label itself. So when you're creating new GUI content, outside of this if statement, the next line you'll have to put the thing for the tooltip. See, this is displayed as a GUI tooltip, so while we're hovering over this, it will also activate this code. It's just how Unity is set up for displaying the tooltips. So it's just going to be using a GUI label, which is pretty much just text. And you can see in here that we haven't specified what the text says. That's because it's displayed within here. And that'll get applied to our tooltip. And then below that, I put in this little other label, and this is what we're going to be using to keep track of our actual, how many points we put into the skill. So if we jump back to our skills, we have skill points required and skill points added. So added is going to be the first one in this. So what we're going to do is just jump in here, skill points added plus, and then what we want to do is do a dash, and you can put whatever you want in here. This is just how I'm going to be displaying mine. Plus, and then skill points required. And we'll paste that in there. And this is just so we can see how many skill points we have put in this. So we can hit Control S to save, and we can jump in game real quick. Make sure, if you followed the previous tutorial, to put it on one of your objects. I just have mine on my main camera still. And in here, after you fill out the required information, you're going to need an icon. Now you can just save it out as a simple 64 by 64 if that's what you have it set. If you want larger icons, you can go through and change this number to something else. If you have 128 by 128, set that up in there and whatnot. And then yeah, just fill out the required information in here. And yeah. Also, on a side note, when you import the icon, it will be displayed as a texture, I believe, and you want to drop down this box and change it to a GUI. Now, if you want it more sharp, you can change it to point or any of these other options. Just mess around with it. Yeah, just drag and drop it right into here. And that's all you should need to set that up. And we can jump in game real quick. Skill points added. Oh, okay. So what I did wrong here is we need to specify. I guess I didn't even talk about the different things here. If you guys are not familiar with arrays, I'll go over it really fast. So an array creates amount of objects, so we put 5 in here, and they're going to be blank elements of our class. So the class that we created, all these different elements get plugged into each one of these different areas, and they're all a blank slate for adding stuff. So this is where we're going to be adding each of our different skills that we can upgrade. And we fill out the required information for each skill, and in order to access it, it goes in this order. So your very first one is not 1, it is 0. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's our list right there for our array. So we can go in here, and these are our skills, and we created skills. So this right here is all of these. And so in order to access our array, we're going to need to call skills, which is right here. And we want to take the first one in there. So 0, like I said before, is our first one in here. So it'll be grabbing all the information from here. So we access it by doing that and which variable we want to access. So since we're grabbing skill points added, it'll grab this, and skill points required will add this. So just hit Control S to save. Anything that you want to display from your array, you have to do it in this format. Close that, and we see we have our icon here, and when we hover over it, it displays crit increased, and it shows down here 0 and 4 because we have no skill points added, and it tells us how much is our maximum skill points we can add. When we click on this, it's not going to do anything, and I apologize that the walking script kind of interferes with this. I'll have to figure out some kind of way to block out that raycast if I'm clicking on an icon. I still haven't figured that out yet, but that's the basic way of doing that. Now, if you don't want the label to move around, you could simply go in here again and change this right here to screen.width divided by 2 and screen.height divided by 2. Now you can also add an extra number, plusing and minusing, to reposition it from the center of the screen, kind of how I did with this, just minusing 10. But yeah, just change that up and set it how you would like. So in the next tutorial, I'm going to be going over how to display multiple different ones, and we're going to be adding points to each one. And that'll probably be the next tutorial, and we'll cover some more advanced stuff and actually getting the skills applied to our character once we start adding more variables for that. But yeah, stay tuned, everyone, for the next tutorial.